Real people visit a couple celebrating Valentine's Day in their own way. Then it's a final split between Claire and Joe.
Look at your ugly face again!
Facts of life. And Rory's in love and it's Super Sydney to the rescue. Then Quincy must stop a brutal murder. Wednesday, a great night on NBC.
Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another episode of Battle of the Network shows. Today, I'm here with Rick, of course, and we're going to talk about the facts of life. So when a man and a woman love each other.
Yes, well, not that kind of facts of
right.
life.
The TV show?
Yeah, let's not go there.
Okay. We're going to break format a little bit and talk about two episodes rather than just one. Partly, so one is I would say a good sort of entry point episode, and the other one is just too ridiculous not to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the two episodes aired back to back.
Yeah.
February of 1982, Wednesday nights on NBC, 9 p.m. Wednesday night was Facts of Life night, and I guess it was a pretty popular show for NBC.
Yeah.
But note the words for NBC.
Right. NBC was in the toilet then.
Yeah, this show, NBC wasn't at its peak. This is on before. Well, this is the third season, 1982. Yeah. So it started, kind of when NBC was at a low point, and it would win its night sometimes. It was a modest hit, or a pretty good hit by the standards, but it was a hit for NBC.
Yeah. Which
probably helped it stay on the air for a staggering 9 seasons.
Right.
9 seasons this show is on.
Yeah.
And I was not watching for 9 seasons.
No.
I think I was probably watching in this season.
Yeah, I'm trying to. When I see the dates, like I can't quite put together. I think I watched a lot, at least at first, kind of the way you would watch Family Ties, as like summer reruns.
Yeah, that's the way I watched this show a lot. It was daytime reruns.
Yeah,
like it was on in the mornings on weekdays for I think like 3 or 4 years.
Right, I think and NBC did that.
Yeah.
So I think I saw a good amount like that, but I at some point was watching it. Although, when I told my brother we might be talking about this, he was dubious of the idea, like that he didn't feel like this was an iconic show from this period, and so I must have been watching it by myself. I don't know, and I know at some point it soured for me, probably for various reasons. One, I realized it wasn't very funny, and two, I just like when they. When they graduated and they started to all have like 80s hair and stuff, it just, I don't know. And like it was, so I wasn't watching in the George Clooney season, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. 9 seasons is a long time for any sitcom to be on.
That is, yeah.
9 seasons.
Right. And these girls went from, some of them went from, say, the entirety of high school and the entirety of college.
Yeah. Yeah, the show went through definitely went through a lot of format changes.
Yeah.
Let me give a shout out to my friend Beth, who had suggested that we talk about this show, and she might disagree that it is not an iconic series. Yeah. I don't know, but it was a big part of my childhood, and I don't understand why. I don't remember particularly liking it. You would think maybe I had a crush on some of the girls, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly enamored with the storylines. It didn't really hit home with my personal life, but it was on TV, and I guess sometimes that's enough.
I would say I did have a crush on one of the characters.
Ooh.
Ooh. At some point, but I'm trying to picture like that. It seems like at 9, I don't know that I would have. Like, that's when this season aired. I was 9, maybe, but...
Charlotte Rae was very appealing back then.
I do remember, I gotta say, so, this was a spin-off from Different Strokes.
Yeah.
Charlotte Rae left Different Strokes. Mrs. Garrett left Different Strokes. I guess originally the setup was that Kimberly attended this school, and she was going to go be the dorm mom. and then Kimberly was never
Yeah.
on the Facts of Life. But and I kind of remember that happening and kind of not liking that Mrs. Garrett was leaving Different Strokes.
Yes.
You know, but then she had her own show. So
Yeah. Well, Mrs. Garrett and Charlotte Rae
Yeah.
was not happy to be leaving Different Strokes.
really,
She
Wasn't
wanted
she-
reassurance because
Oh,
Different
right.
Strokes was another show very popular for NBC and probably one of the hottest things NBC had going on, and she had a good gig there.
Yeah.
And she was hesitant to leave this new show, and I guess the producers assured her that, hey, look, if this Facts of Life thing doesn't work out, you'll have your own spot back on
that's right.
Different Strokes, which may have been BS because I think the same thing happened to the Ropers on Three's Company, and by the time the Ropers tanked, they were not able
Yeah.
to go back to Three's Company. So maybe they just told Charlotte Rae that.
They
but-
might have. I mean, you know, this was produced by Norman Lear's company, and I know, like, she got hired because she'd worked with him before. I think they were friendly, and they couldn't find someone for that role, and he suggested her. So I think maybe, for some reason, I was thinking in my mind he had promised her own show,
Yeah.
but maybe I was just confusing it with this.
Well, no, it
promise.
might have been two things. I mean, one, let's spin off Different Strokes.
Yeah,
And another, it might have been a happy convergence there and
Right.
give Charlotte Rae her. We want to be in the Charlotte Rae
yeah.
business.
And Norman Lear is really, I mean, he's the king of a lot of things, but one of those is spin-offs.
Yes.
Because we're reading up on this, there were like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 attempts to spin off shows from Facts of Life,
Wow.
like backdoor pilots.
None of which came
No.
to fruition. Yeah. I remember seeing some of those like as they aired, and
Like I think this season alone, this is season 3, had 2.
really,
It had one called The Academy. The description I read of that episode was that just Joe tried to set up Blair with some ne'er-do-well. But other things I saw said that was about like a boys' academy.
oh, okay.
And then there's another one called Joe's Cousins. This is about her like cousins in New Jersey, and that was supposed to be one.
I think I remember that one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So this
And
is
then at the end, there was going to be some new series with like Natalie and Tootie living in New York in a loft with David Spade.
at the end after with David Spade.
Yes.
At the end, after, let me say it one more time, 9
Nine
seasons, they
right.
were trying to find a way to extend this franchise.
I believe there was also a plan for, I guess if it had returned, like Blair was going to buy the school or something
Wow.
and have to, figure out how to run it.
Huh. Oh, that would have been wacky.
Yeah. So, but as far as episodes, like the ones I remember for some reason are from like that first season where,
Where they had all the girls.
yeah, and I think maybe because they're ones that get talked about. But I had like there's one where Tootie and Natalie buy bongs because I think one of the other girls has one, and they just think they're decorations. And I sort of remember seeing that as a kid and not understanding what it was, of course. And it seems like a lot of the reading about it and seeing some things about it, and they covered a lot of topics that totally went over my head.
Yeah, they had a lot of very special episodes.
Yeah, and just it's kind of understandable that it was on at 9.
Yeah.
Like this season alone covered apparently sexual assault, child prostitution, drinking, or underage drinking, a teacher being briefly arrested for being at a cocaine party. And they used the word that was one of the episodes we considered, and I watched that one, and they used the word cocaine in the episode.
It's heavy material
Yeah.
for what seems like a pretty lightweight show nowadays. But yeah, they
Right.
definitely tackled a lot of these topics.
Yeah, like that's a thing. Like, I mean, it was a Norman Lear, his production company, but it to me like that and Different Strokes feel like almost like knockoff Norman Lear shows.
Yeah.
Like they're not as funny, but they're also not as skilled at the serious part of it.
Yeah. I think too, especially in this is what I would consider. I mean, you're saying you remember a lot of the first season episodes.
There's the ones that just stick as like a specific episode.
Okay.
But I mean, I remember these characters more.
Yeah, this is like the prime of the show.
Yeah.
So it started out, there were multiple girls, and that's where you had Molly Ringwald and several other characters that were ultimately dropped after the first season.
Right.
The headmaster and different characters living in, the dorms and stuff. And then, in this era was the Eastland was their Eastland Academy, where they were working in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
and living together there. And then after Blair and Joe graduated,
Right.
then they started Edna's Edibles, I think, the Edna's Edibles era, where
Right.
Mrs. Garrett started this food place, and the girls helped her run that. Then Mrs. Garrett left.
Yeah.
Edna's Edibles burned down to the ground.
Right.
And Cloris Leachman took over, and they opened
Coincidence?
up... Yeah. I don't know, Blair. And Cloris Leachman came in, and they started this boutique.
Yeah, what was it? Over that.
Yeah, something like that. And I was checked out by this. They brought in Mackenzie Aston as like the Jump the Shark character.
Right, and George Clooney was
around as a handyman, was always hanging around, and I think he helped them out with the shop or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there's these distinct eras of the show, and I think people that fondly remember the show would probably fondly remember anything without Cloris Leachman years. I don't think are very popular at all.
No.
I mean, it's fun to think of George Clooney being on The Facts of Life, but this is the prime of the year with the core girls, Mrs. Garrett and Blair, Joe, Natalie, and Tootie.
Right.
And do you want to say for now which girl was your favorite?
Sure, Joe.
Okay, Joe, the streetwise, tough talking,
Right.
fish out of water,
but also very sensitive.
Yes.
Clearly, because she's just in these 2 episodes. She gets really riled up by things.
Yeah, well, she had
but in a kind of a not just angry way. Like she's got that.
Yeah, she cares.
That's how
about
she
things.
expresses it.
She's
But
passionate.
she's also like almost crying a lot of times.
Yeah, she has a temper.
Yeah.
She's always needling Blair. Blair, the spoiled sort of socialite, daughter of divorced wealthy parents.
Right.
Natalie, the vivacious comedian, I guess, of the group, always making the wisecracks, and Tootie, the youngest.
Yeah.
Was
Poor
on roller
Tootie.
skates a lot in the first couple
naive.
seasons. Braces,
Braces,
young, naive, and a lot of the lessons of the show would go through. Tootie would be learning the lessons, including, I guess, in one of the episodes we'll talk about here. But
right.
Yeah, so that's The Facts of Life, and this is season 3, probably the show at its prime. And
yeah, so it's the second season of this group, and so I didn't know or had forgotten. In the first episode of season 2, they stole the cafeteria van and wrecked it. Yeah, and that's why they're working and living in the cafeteria.
Yeah, I think Joe had something that was the
ringleader.
Yes, exactly. And apparently they had some kind of like indentured servitude,
right.
where they had to pay off the damage they did to the van by working and living at the cafeteria building.
Yeah, instead of the dorms.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Garrett had been promoted to the dietitian, school dietitian. So I think in the first season she's just a dorm mother.
Right.
And so now she's running the cafeteria.
So it's actually an interesting premise, and it gives an excuse for all of them to be together all the time in a school environment, which is pretty clever. And
it makes the set a little different. Like, instead of being a typical house set with a staircase.
Yeah.
You've got a cafeteria. I mean, it's in a house still.
Yeah.
Or a house-type building, so it's just some round tables with some windows, and then you've got a sort of a lounge area.
Yeah, like a rec room or lounge. Yeah.
And then I guess they're all in the same bedroom.
Yeah, like a real open space, and apparently as we see,
bathroom.
Yeah, they all have to share a sink.
A sink that's not attached to the wall.
Right. That doesn't have a mirror.
Right.
At the.
It was really like.
Yeah, at the opening of.
So this is the first episode.
Yeah. This aired after. It's the second of the 2 episodes that aired. This aired February 10th. But Four Musketeers. Maybe we should start with that.
Yeah.
One. Okay, so it starts. We're talking about they're all getting ready in the morning, and they're all like crowded around and looking at us.
Yeah.
Presumably looking at the mirror.
Right, and a lot of this footage from this episode shows up in the credits too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
like about half the episode.
Yeah.
No, yeah, they're doing that, and and you buy into the illusion that they're looking in the mirror and stuff, and then at some point the camera pulls back, and it's like, I mean, it could be, a vanity really wouldn't be necessarily attached to the wall, but
right.
But it seems like all of a sudden it's a sink in the middle of a room.
Right, it really exposes the thing. Yeah, you're right, because it starts out like in a tighter shot, and then when it goes back, it's like, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah. No, and that was interesting too. So I, in trying to find an episode, I stumbled on some on TV and recorded them, and I watched this one, and It turns out a lot had been cut out because I rewatched it from a different source, and so even a lot of the business in that, which is kind of like an interestingly choreographed thing where they keep like
they're all
moving
jostling
in and out,
each other, clearly in each other's way.
Yeah, but it seemed pretty well rehearsed and put together, and
yeah, and it was like a lot of it was there wasn't a lot of dialogue. It was like physical and their expressions and things, and just
yeah, and Blair blow drying her hair in Joe's face, and that's when that's when they start talking, and the water goes out in the middle of all this, and Mrs. Garrett shows up to take a shower, and there's no water, and it's cold, and they're complaining, and she has good news. But she's going to tell them later.
Yeah, I mean, there's she teases that for later.
Yeah.
But they're establishing the fact that they have these issues. So there's issues with their living environment. There's issues with each other.
Yeah.
And they're sort of coming to a head.
Yeah. So they complain about it being cold or being too hot. It's the heat.
First, yeah.
It's too hot. It was too hot the night before, and then kind of the next time you see them, they're all under a blanket.
Yeah.
On the couch in the lounge because now it's freezing.
Yes, exactly.
And then they really start getting on each other's nerves.
They're all bickering with each other, but mostly, it's always
Joe and
Blair. And this time, Tootie and Natalie really are starting to get on each other's nerves.
Yeah. Blair specifically by going, claiming that's just breathing.
Yeah.
I'm totally on Joe's side.
Yeah, it's a theatrical attention-getting sigh, definitely.
Yeah. Now, Joe suggests she might stop breathing. That might be a solution. That's maybe going a little far.
Yeah, it's a little extreme.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of hard edge that interested a young Michael Kogel watching the show.
I guess so. So, and then Blair and Joe take their argument to Mrs. Garrett, of course, to solve.
Yeah, things are going on, and I think I'm not sure if this is the exact moment you're talking about, but I think it is. But let me just say, like Mrs. Garrett, I said I wasn't particularly enamored with any of the characters, and Mrs. Garrett though always fascinated me, and she still does. And there's just something about the way Charlotte Rae plays the character. Like some actors, you say, they have a certain delivery, or there's a brief digression. When I did telemarketing for a very, very brief period.
You did it in Charlotte Rae's voice?
I have a point with this.
Okay.
I did not. I started out, and then, somebody told me, it's not good to sell popular mechanics talking like Charlotte Rae. But anyways, I was selling magazines, and, sometimes I would get feedback, or anybody starting out would say, well, you're doing a little too sing-songy, and I didn't know what that meant, but then he'd say, well, hi, this is a... So some actors might do that sometimes on occasion with certain line readings.
Yeah.
Charlotte Rae does every single line as Miss Garrett, singing it, and I'm not even exaggerating here.
Right.
And
there's one line she specifically
remind me that she says, "You've had your troubles before, you'll work it out."
Right.
And she, she even kind of, moves her head a little bit, and she says it. She's always like chirping around when she's saying this stuff.
Doesn't she also say, maybe it's in the other? At some point, she's like, said, me or something.
I'm not sure.
Just like one word like that stood out to me.
Yeah.
But,
well, to me, I probably didn't even notice that one so much because it was just the one word. But so they take troubles to Mrs. Garrett, and she just kind of chirps at him. She doesn't think it's serious. Right. As she says, you've had your troubles before. You'll work it out. Yeah. And she doesn't really. She downplays it.
Right. But they just won't shut up.
Right. It escalates, and she's sort of forced to reveal her good news to them.
Which is they've paid off their bill.
Yes.
If they want, they can move back to the dorms.
Yeah. Like, ooh. Yeah. Which is actually appealing, to them, but...
Right, and then we really start seeing just everything, like Natalie goes after Tootie, and...
Yeah, they really cut loose, like, finally.
Right.
And it's not even like the appeal of going back to the dorms, it's like the appeal of getting away from each other.
Yeah.
Like,
Tootie's always leaving her books on Natalie's bed.
Yeah. Blair's sighing.
Blair's Blair, yeah. I don't remember if anyone went after Natalie, but I know later Tootie calls her a geek in a very unpleasant way, but
yeah, Tootie like had some weak material. I think she seized on something Natalie said, like, "See, that's an example of you always do it."
Yeah,
but they're all frustrated with each other.
And Mrs. Garrett says, "Well, it's up to you." And Joe's the first to cave and say, "I'm moving out."
Yeah, and
everyone else that gives them permission.
Right, since one person did.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of when the Beatles broke up. Like, as soon as Paul McCartney put out that that news release. Everybody else could
Right.
say, "Hey, you know,"
Yeah.
and this could have been as momentous an occasion. I think Mrs.
Right.
Garrett realizes, she's like, "This is like the Beatles breaking up." But
Now I believe when Tootie and Natalie had bought the bongs, Blair went to the press and told them that they'd all bought bongs.
right, yes,
She was the last one to buy a bong, but
yeah, exactly. But you know, they all had their agendas.
right.
These four girls all had their agendas, and
Yeah. Now, Mrs. Garrett had warned them somewhere in there that they had all become kind of like a family, and that's a hard thing to find.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. She didn't want to outright tell them, but she was definitely trying to steer them towards not making this decision.
Right. Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I guess she was doing more than verbally steering them,
Yeah.
because she told them that she has to new people are going to move into the place. in the
Right.
living
Yeah.
quarters.
Yeah. So the next scene after this is like later. We don't know how much later,
Yeah.
and she gets a visit from it's in the cafeteria, and like each of them kind of comes and talks to her on their own.
Right, talking about how
or at
great
least-
their lives are.
Yeah, Joe does, and no one else is there.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a sensitive scene, and I think that whole scene was cut from the first version I watched. I mean, the
Oh, really?
entire Joe
Oh, okay.
Mrs. Garrett part. I think it started with either Blair or even Natalie walking in. And by the time Natalie comes in, there are people there eating and
Right,
stuff.
right. Which isn't like Mrs. Garrett is getting preparing the
She's
cafeteria.
putting salt and pepper
She's putting
shakers
stuff
on.
out on the table, and you see people come in, which is something that I didn't always remember. A lot of scenes with
Yeah.
people actually eating that, and it was kind of cool because it's like evidence that this is actually an actual place where
Right.
people come and eat. You know, it's not just a place for them to hang
And
out.
yet it still has the artifice of extras being on something,
Yes.
because there are these important conversations going on right behind a table with two girls at it who seem oblivious.
Right, to the fact that all this drama is
Right.
unfolding, like at a girls' academy, like this prep academy.
Right.
There's drama going on, and none of the other girls there are really caring about it. They're
Yeah.
trying to find out what's going on.
And Natalie comes in with her new roommate, Brenda, who, one, is the only guest star on the episode. Two, I think, for my money, had the funniest line,
Oh yeah.
or at least line reading, when Mrs. Garrett asks her how she is, and she's adequate. Because she's, in that one word, she establishes she's boring.
Yeah.
And then you get a little more, like Natalie has some jokes about French bread connection and stuff.
Yeah.
She's
something
looking
that
at them like
She
they're-
actually repeated it to try to get a
Yeah. And it doesn't work.
right, which is now a good time to let me interject and think about Natalie. Okay. First of all, to think what Charlotte Ray would do with a line with one word like adequate, that boggles the mind.
Yeah.
But Natalie, Mindy Cohn, everything she says, she always adds like a little shrug or smile or like half giggle like at the end of it. Like, she's just that kind of like TV comedy kind of acting where
Yeah.
like everything she says, she lets you know that it's a joke,
Right.
And that sort of fascinates me too. So and it's kind of interesting that after she makes the
fascinates you, or
well, yes, it does. It fascinates me. Yes, it fascinates me. Yeah, but so it's funny after she makes the French bread connection line, she has to like say it again so that her new roommate knows that it's a joke. It's like, well,
right?
I think by this point your roommate is well aware that you tend to make
Yeah.
humorous statements sometimes,
Right.
Natalie.
But clearly doesn't understand them,
Yeah,
or maybe doesn't have a sense of humor.
that's a
I think that's
possibility.
Mrs. Garrett has a French accent.
Yeah.
And then Tootie shows up, and Natalie and Tootie get in that fight, where Tootie calls her a geek.
Yeah, it was uncalled for. I mean, talk about her line readings all you will, Tootie, but
Yeah.
calling her a geek, that's just out of bounds.
It is. Yeah. So then Mrs. Garrett tells them, someone else is coming in, and you got to go clean up the room.
Yeah, she can't have them move in the shape it's in.
Yeah.
So
Do
the
you
girls
think-
have just
Do you think this is a plan?
yes, I do.
Okay.
I think the girls have just reinforced to her how good their lives are now. But
Right.
I think even now Mrs. Garrett realizes that it's not really that good.
Yeah.
The best thing for them is to get together. So she has this scheme to get them to spend time together,
Right.
and it's by painting the room,
Mm-hmm.
basically cleaning and painting the room, which of course requires big rollers and big
Brushes.
gobs of paint.
Right.
Yes. And anytime on
What
TV,
could happen?
yes, if you see people with paint rollers and paint, somebody's gonna get paint on them.
Yeah.
And sure enough,
And I found myself watching these, questioning whether there was a live audience. I'm still questioning that. But I got to say, when Joe, so Natalie fools Joe into making her take over painting a certain area, but Joe goes to, she got to put paint on the roller, and she puts it in a chair that Blair is standing by, and then Blair, right as soon as she puts it there, you hear a little, oh.
Right, there's a little anticipation. Yeah.
And then Blair sits in it, and then it's just very quickly all out paint fight.
It escalates.
And the girls are all covered in paint.
Yeah.
Tootie tries to escape, but they don't let her.
Right.
That was kind of amusing. Like Joe takes her, puts her arm around her, like, what should we do with her? And Natalie gives like a Roman thumbs down.
Right. They all bond together
Yeah.
while this, and even while they're in the middle of it, they sort of have like smiles, like they're
Right.
having fun and sort of like enjoying the.
Yeah. And they had
back and
been
forth.
kind of like having memories a little bit, but then trying to, then be like,
Yeah, 'cause
dismissing the
Right.
memories.
They're doing the thing like, boy, can you imagine somebody else living in this, living in this room and all that, and you can tell that they don't like the idea.
Right.
That they're already hesitant to the idea of somebody taking their spot, their place. But
like Joe says, what's he gonna do? Seal it off like King Tut's tomb?
yeah, exactly.
And then Mrs. Garrett walks in on the fun.
And Mrs. Garrett gets a little.
I think she's mad,
Yeah,
she's at least playing mad.
right. Well, there's so much because they've got paint all over the place.
Yeah.
And clearly, she talks about they're gonna have to redo the floors,
Right.
like, and all this, and,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be enough to put them into essential slavery for another 4 or 5 years, and
Right.
or at
Well,
least until they graduate high school.
yeah. Tootie says she's gonna have to babysit till she's 40.
Yeah,
Clearly, Tootie doesn't have a concept of, getting a job, a better paying job once you're an adult.
yeah, that's too far off. Yeah,
Or she's aware of,
Right.
what her college loan debts are going to be.
right.
And
Yeah.
stripping a floor on top of that.
Yeah, wow. Well, Mrs. Garrett doesn't directly suggest
No.
the solution to this, but she definitely leads them towards
She's
it.
like,
because
I think you could come up with a solution.
Yeah, and she's kind of like doing her little head nods and sort of like
Yeah.
looking to the audience
Twinkle
can
in
see
her
that
eye.
she knows what she's doing and
Right.
everything, and she sort of lets the girls come up with come to this conclusion that
Yeah.
well, we could just
Right.
move back in here and work at the cafeteria
Yeah.
to pay off all this damage.
Yeah. And it takes them, they kind of want to, they at least pretend to resist that idea. But in the end, they're the Four Musketeers.
That's right. Money's money, and apparently they got a pretty sweet gig working at that cafeteria.
Well, wouldn't Blair be able to pay off that just on her own?
That's a good question. Why would Blair? Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think she has to. She only caused a quarter of the damage.
Yeah,
But
you could argue.
like Joe's a scholarship girl.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly Tootie and Natalie's background.
yeah. Presumably this is an expensive place,
Yeah.
but I would also think that I think Blair's parents went to the school. Her
Right.
parents are probably donors.
Yeah. They just donate a new floor.
Yeah, I guess it was some kind of lesson that they wanted Blair to learn.
Right.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I hope they explained at some point why Blair, not just the floor, but the whole thing with the van.
Right.
I
yeah.
guess they were mad that she ran out with the van
Right.
in the first place, so they
Their
figured
Blair
it was,
wouldn't do that.
it was punishment. Yeah,
She would never cause trouble.
no, it was Joe's fault.
Of course. She's a no good kid from the Bronx.
However, so to punish, however, they still made Blair room with Joe and live with Joe
Yeah.
in order to pay off the damage that Joe caused.
Well, they probably thought in their good way, that Blair's behavior would rub off on Joe. It would make Joe a more sophisticated young woman.
Yeah.
It was an act of charity on their part.
I'm thinking there must have been an episode along those lines where a My Fair Lady episode where Blair prepared Joe for some kind of prom or something.
That sounds awfully familiar.
Yeah, I'm not just speculating. I
Like-
must be somewhere in the
Like Joe, at least like something where Joe has to wear a dress.
right. Yeah, exactly. And she comes out like feeling all self-conscious, and
everyone's
maybe
like,
you get a
"Ooh."
woo.
Yeah.
Maybe even the audience claps and hoots, or
Yeah.
which is there a I assume that there was a studio audience. It's the kind of show where you want to hear those oohs
Yeah.
and oh,
Right.
kind of the reactions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
I
you
think it's
usually get
because a
them-
lot of the jokes weren't landing for me. that I was suspect of the laughter in the audience.
Yeah. Well, if it was a laugh track, if it was canned, they went the extra mile on some of those reactions, adding some of that stuff in.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's not really a very jokey show. I mean, I guess it is in the sense that Joe's always making wisecracks and Natalie's making.
They're kind of all
like
making digs at each other.
But they're not. It's not. Yeah, it's not that.
Yeah.
It's a lot more sit than calm. It seems like.
And every once in a while, Mrs. Garrett gets a good line, but
yeah.
I don't think she had any funny lines in this episode.
Right. It's definitely a corny type of show as far as that goes. I think.
Yeah.
It's a certain brand of humor.
Right.
And maybe it's not working for you in this episode.
Yeah. I don't know. It's another. My memories were better than the experience now. I don't know. Or maybe it's if you're younger, some of that stuff would be funny.
Yeah. Like some of the put down humor.
Here's a line that perplexed me a little bit.
Okay.
Just because of the time that this aired, when Mrs. Garrett says that this is going to cost all this money. No. When Mrs. Garrett says she has good news for them, I think Natalie says, "What? Bruce Springsteen decided to adopt all of us?"
Oh yeah.
But he wasn't. I mean, he was on his way up still.
Right. This is 1982.
Right. The Born in the USA was still 2 years away.
Yeah.
So, I don't think Bruce, post the river, still had enough money to adopt 4 girls and make it worth their while to. Now, granted, Natalie wouldn't know that.
Right. I mean, you would expect.
It just seemed like a weird choice.
Right. Yeah.
Like, because you could insert any famous person in
and
the
why
line.
would he? Was Bruce Springsteen really like a quintessential teen idol at the time?
I don't think so.
It's kind of an unusual thing. I mean, even like.
He wasn't like muscle guy. Yeah. No.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point, and I'm glad you brought that up because that did stand out at the time. Like, it seemed a little out there.
I mean, based on episode order, or the air date order, we know that they had already figured out Jermaine Jackson wasn't going to adopt them.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, if she had said like Jermaine, you would understand that. Like, oh, Jermaine Jackson. What girl wouldn't be?
Right. Yeah.
Enthralled by Jermaine Jackson.
Yeah. What if she had said Prince?
Yeah. Okay. Prince.
Mrs. Garrett would have freaked.
Oh no, Natalie. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm trying to think of it, or even like Rick Springfield or somebody. Yeah, Bruce Springsteen does seem like an odd choice.
Maybe that's just kind of music Natalie liked. It was a character moment. It's letting us know what Natalie liked. She's into rock and roll.
Yeah.
She's into working man. I mean, I think Joe would be a Springsteen fan more than.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you.
And
Joe
was even from.
She was from the Bronx.
Oh, she was from the Bronx. Yeah. Okay. Not Jersey. Okay.
Yeah, but but then sometimes you hear people. If you actually are like a working class person, you might not want to hear about a bunch of depressing songs.
You want to hear something a little bit more aspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still points to Brenda for a good line reading.
Yeah, you liked the Brenda character.
Apparently, she didn't do anything but that one line because I couldn't find her in IMDb.
Really?
I paused the video and looked at the actress. And,
a key moment in a hit show like Facts of Life, and she doesn't even rate an IMDb entry. Yeah. Again, another depressing sign of the fallibility of the internet.
Right.
Let us down again.
I want to see I want to find out that there was a backdoor pilot with her.
You're really into this character, this Brenda character.
Yeah. She also goes on hunts for rocks.
Yeah, that's they mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Brenda and her rocks.
Right. Yeah, that's what Natalie says when they're making the decision to move back in. It's like, Brenda has her rocks.
Yeah. What yeah. So that's the Four Musketeers is basically like it's an interesting episode because it's about the relationship of the girls and to a lesser extent Mrs. G.
Yeah, I mean the fact that it only has one other character.
Yeah.
Like I liked that. That felt like a good choice in that sense that you're just getting them and kind of
right
what they're about and not an issue.
Yeah, not a gimmick episode, not a stunt episode. Basically, just about the relationship of the girls and the characters. So yes. Right. By contrast, a week before, the episode Starstruck aired again on NBC.
Yeah.
And this episode is about celebrity worship.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, fandom, and the big coup of landing Jermaine Jackson as a guest star. Yeah, because yes, Tootie is obsessed with Jermaine Jackson.
She is. She's the president of at least the Eastland branch of his fan club.
Yes.
She's kind of a bossy president.
Right. She's organizing everything. She's got the projects ready.
Yeah. Some of the girls want to help her make the papier mache head of him, but
that's right.
That's her job.
Yeah, she's crafted this papier mache head of Jermaine Jackson. Yeah. Which what did you think about the likeness?
Well, I would say it's less skilled than the blind sculptress in Hello.
Yeah.
But probably more skilled than like I could make.
Yeah, somewhere in between.
Yeah. And it's paper mache.
I see some resemblance in those two examples, but
yeah. And more importantly, she got a letter signed by him, thanking her for being such a big fan.
Yeah, she's beaming over that.
Yeah.
She's feeling pretty good about that and asserting herself as the leader of this fan club.
Right. Unfortunately, she's spending so much time on that. Her schoolwork is suffering, and she's letting down her friends.
Yeah. So while this is going on, Joe is making preparations for it's the scholarship fair for Eastland Scholarship Fair.
Right.
And she's basically organizing this and putting this together. And it's very important to her because she received the scholarship to be able to go to Eastland.
Right.
So it's important to her. And she's enlisted the help of her friends and Mrs. Garrett and everybody to help her organize this big event.
Yeah.
Which, unfortunately, we don't get to see, but it sounds like it's going to be a real big deal.
It's got food. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to have scarves. So Tootie's supposed to make scarves.
Yeah, that's an interesting element of the fair, isn't it?
I don't know what kind of scarves. For some reason, maybe it's the Jermaine Jackson part. I was envisioning kind of like more like like silk scarves.
Yeah.
I'm assuming really it's like knitting scarves.
Okay, so is it going to be...
I don't know that Tootie, maybe she knows how to make a silk scarf, but...
were they going to be scarves to sell
I
to
think
people
so,
to raise
yeah.
money? Or were they going to have like a Stevie Nicks type come in and like wave them as some kind of performance art thing?
I think to sell.
Okay.
I think there's even maybe a number thrown out, like 25 or something.
Yeah, that's a lot of scarves.
Yeah.
And
Blair's helping make mobiles. I guess those are for sale too.
Oh, okay. I was assuming like for decoration.
That might be for decoration.
But you could be right, yeah.
But so maybe it's like a craft. A lot of it's a craft fair. Or
that could be. Yeah.
I don't know. She wasn't doing it correctly. Joe wasn't happy with what she was doing.
No.
And she just assumes, that everyone's going to screw up anyway.
Yeah. Well,
it's important to her, but she's also got that
yeah, she's got exacting standards.
Chip on her shoulder.
And, yeah, she's going in with a negative attitude.
Yeah, definitely. Also, Blair's cousin Jerry is there to do a stand-up performance.
Yes.
And cousin Jerry was a recurring character played by Jerry Jewell, a stand-up comedian with cerebral palsy. And that was like a big deal. Like, I remember that.
Yeah.
Although I feel like, weirdly, the first place I saw her was on Donahue.
Really?
And she said she'd been on Facts of Life, and I didn't remember that. Like, and then saw her, something. But, and of course, fans of Deadwood would know her as Jewel, the I don't know what her job title was, but she worked at Al Swearingen's, the Gem Saloon, sweeping the floors and getting insulted.
Yeah.
And giving back as good as she got.
Right.
Of course.
And she was definitely it was an interesting ad to have a semi-regular with cerebral palsy, and it was an essential part of her character. Maybe to the character's detriment and lack of long-term viability. But
that's apparently why she stopped being, or I think she was on like 8 episodes or 5 or 8. But
sounds.
The producers told her that the audience started thinking anytime she was on, it was going to be a very special episode, and she stopped doing it because of that.
Well, I mean, if you got Natalie there to be the designated wisecracker,
right?
Do you really need Jerry just hanging out there? I mean, I certainly didn't mind having her in this episode.
No, and she had some
good lines. It was
sort
of refreshing to have her there as a comic.
Yeah.
And just like happens to be there hanging out, and that's pretty cool. Even today, that you're like, surprised they didn't play up other aspects. So
right, and I told you the syndicated version I watched of it, they cut almost all of her lines, and a lot of them were jokes.
Yeah.
And it just didn't make a lot of sense why she was there. Why is this fair important to her, you know?
Another lesson in the evils of syndication edits.
Yeah. I think they also cut the little bit where the fan club sings a little bit of a song.
Oh, yes. Let's Get Serious, I believe.
Right, yeah.
All right, put you on the spot here. Favorite Jermaine Jackson song? Go.
I don't know any Jermaine Jackson songs.
Oh, okay. Sorry to put you on the spot.
ABC? Can we count that? You're talking solo.
I don't know if we can count them, but let's get into that. Let's get into Jermaine a little bit when we actually meet him in this episode.
Well, we get to see him? What? Oh, you already said that, yeah. That they had the casting coup.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Right, yeah.
I spoiled, but yes. So Tootie gets a call.
Right, and Tootie is just revealed she hasn't made the scarves at all.
Yes, she's totally blown that off.
But she's going to work at the ticket booth.
Yeah.
She'll do that.
I don't even know if she suggests that. I think it's Blair that suggests that, right?
No, she says...
Oh, okay. I thought Blair
does.
suggests, well, she can work at because there's not enough time to make the scarves. And...
Yeah, I think Tootie says something.
All right.
Somebody does. Anyway, remind me, Mrs. Garrett has a good line reading in all that sequence, too. Sorry. I can't repeat it, though, because it's kind of a...
It's kind of a profane?
It seems profane by the way she phrases a compound word.
Wait a minute, so you want me to remind you off...
No. Well, I just can't say it the way she said it. I feel like...
Nobody could say it the way she says
Yeah.
it. That's okay.
Natalie's trying to write up the menu for the cookies and using all this alliteration, and Mrs. Garrett says, that sounds fine if it's the Pussycat Lounge.
Okay.
But she says, she really emphasizes the first part of that word.
Okay. I didn't catch that. That's
yeah.
Charlotte Rae getting one in on...
Oh, yeah. And she's got that,
yeah.
like that I'm saying a zinger line look on her face.
Yeah. Well, it's like a
is.
burlesque. I mean, just the Pussycat...
Right.
Would be like an all go-to word back then for any kind of burlesque type of
right,
or maybe if you're really being racy, possibly a gentleman's club, but mostly like some kind of like Playboy club type place, I guess, or something.
She just leans into the first part of the word.
That was okay. Yeah, that's
sorry to interrupt the plot. So
that's quite all right.
In the middle of Tootie, saying she's going to do this, there's a phone call. Natalie answers. She does a dumb joke.
Mm-hmm.
And then, or sets up Blair for a joke. She says, like, do I look normal?
Yeah.
Is that a trick question?
Yeah, right.
And anyway, someone from Jermaine Jackson's camp has called Tootie.
Right, one of his main, handlers.
Right.
And thanks her for all the hard work she's doing.
Yeah.
And says that, he's leaving 2 tickets for...
Because she's
inviting her.
His number one fan.
You're right. Thanks her for being the number one fan as Jermaine's special guest.
Yeah.
She's invited to his upcoming concert. I guess stop on his tour in New York. And of course, Tootie's very excited about this.
But it's Saturday. It's in the same time as the fair.
Right.
It's in New York.
Yeah. And apparently where exactly is Eastland Academy?
It's in Peekskill, New York.
Okay, so
which
it's
I think is
upstate.
a made up.
Okay.
Yeah, or maybe
it's supposed to be somewhere
County
in
or
upstate
something.
New York, and this is like in the city at Jermaine's playing.
Yeah, I think maybe
Madison
it's
Square Garden or something.
like an hour away or something.
Okay.
So.
And Tootie, of course, is 13?
Something.
Or 14, maybe at the most.
Yeah, she's definitely younger than the other ones.
Maybe she's not that young, but yeah, she's
around that. I think. Yeah.
Not of driving age, I think.
No.
Right.
And probably not of riding a train by herself age.
But she's got 2 tickets, so
yeah, they're at the
Mrs.
box
Garrett can take her.
Right.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Why not?
Because they've already made a commitment.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Not just Tootie has made a commitment. Mrs. Garrett has made a commitment as well.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Garrett knows that Tootie's schoolwork is suffering. She's got other things besides the fair, but this directly contradicts with the fair. So Mrs. Garrett tells her, very matter of factly, well, it sounds nice, but you can't go,
Right.
Tootie's like, well, no, Tootie's just assuming she's going to go.
Yeah.
It's a big thing, and it is a big thing.
It is, and she freaks out.
She does freak out, yes.
I mean, the first time I watched it twice, and the first time I watched it, I just wasn't expecting that at all, and I kind of just sat back a little bit because it made me uncomfortable.
Really?
Just the amount of I have to go. I'm going. If you don't take me, I'm going anyway.
Yeah, she says she'll go no matter what.
Yeah.
She's determined. She doesn't care, and she starts crying.
Yeah.
She's very emotional about it, but I don't know. maybe it's because I'm a father and I'm used to seeing
No.
some tantrums.
Yeah.
But it didn't really seem like that much of a mania to me.
Right.
I mean, it was intense, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Maybe in context of the character,
yeah,
it's like, Tootie's, because they all, when other girls hear about it, they're like, "Our Tootie, really?"
right. Well, okay, so right, it is a surprise, and
Yeah.
Mrs. Garrett eventually backs down and pats her in the back and says, "Oh, we'll go, Tootie."
Yeah.
Which I totally disagreed with that decision.
Right.
And I was the one that was saying, well, so what? Let her go. It's a big deal to get 2 big tickets to a concert. But really, they had this commitment, I would have been fine if Mrs. Garrett said, look, we'll make up some excuse. We'll tell Joe we're sick or something like that, and then we'll just go to the concert.
Right.
I would have been fine with that. However, Mrs. Garrett told her no and then totally backed down just because Tootie, bawled a little bit. And actually, the other girls get upset about this.
They do.
Because they cut to, like, a dazed Mrs. Garrett.
Right.
Recounting this whole... Or saying why she's taking them and everything. And Blair's upset, She's like, so all we got to do is throw a tantrum and get our way?
Yeah.
And she's got a good point.
Right. And obviously Joe's upset because it's her fare.
And Mrs. Garrett was going to be part of this, too.
Yeah. So you don't... And then Mrs. Garrett tries to justify it with a fascinating... So she says when she was a girl, she swooned over Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't like this. And then she remembers seeing films of girls screaming.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry.
Girls at the Pussycat Lounge.
Yeah, that's right. What? Screaming about the Beatles and just...
Yeah.
And it disturbed her.
Yeah, she's got this faraway look in her eyes when she's saying this. Like
or frightened. I forget what the exact verb she used was.
Yeah.
But,
disturbed. Yeah, she's got this very sober look on her face. Like she's so affected. She'd never seen that, and and again until like now. And that's what this reminded her of Beatlemania.
Films of this far off time, 20 years before.
Yeah.
When you girls were a few years from being born.
Yes, and some girls, went crazy and they screamed at concerts and you couldn't even hear the Beatles sing. It was so bad.
They had to stop touring.
Right, yeah. What exactly was she doesn't say like, girls got, trampled. She's just talking about this general girls yelling and this hysteria. Like, oh, it was terrible.
Right.
It was like the Salem witch trials or something like that. It's like, this is your justification for letting Tootie go to this Jermaine Jackson concert?
Yeah.
I'm not buying it.
Right.
I was very disappointed in Mrs. Garrett. Very disappointed.
Except for then, if she hadn't, we might not have gotten Jermaine Jackson on the show.
Yes,
Unless they
storyline,
had
I'm
had
disappointed in Mrs. Garrett.
They could have had some contrivance where he showed up at the school.
Right.
But that wouldn't have taught the lesson they're trying to teach.
As a viewer, I'm glad that they went to the concert.
Yeah.
This is probably a lot more interesting than Joe's scholarship fair. Even with the scarf twirling and the mobile making and everything, I'd rather see this than...
Yeah.
So Mrs. Garrett takes Tootie to the concert, and it's a zoo backstage.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to see Jermaine Jackson.
Right.
And, why wouldn't they? But
yeah, he's got a bodyguard with a cowboy hat who's not letting him in.
yeah. Some mean old bodyguard won't let these screaming teenagers,
And it turns, and Tootie's got this, she's got the giant box containing the paper mache head.
Yes, that's the present for
very
Jermaine's.
important. She also screams, I'm the president of his fan club. And some girl says, so am I. And she's like, no, I'm the president. And then this kid who gets off a couple good lines, he's like, yeah, and I'm the first lady.
Yeah, a guy.
Yeah,
like the
guy.
one, I think like the one boy in
Right,
this group of like screaming girls, yeah.
Right. But one of them steals the guy's cowboy hat, and he moves from the door, and Tootie sneaks in.
Right.
She rushes in.
She rushes in, quick into this, backstage dressing room lounge kind of thing.
And maybe rightly so, but this is again another thing where I kind of reacted. Like, they react to her probably as bodyguards should, like she's coming there to kill him.
Right. It's like
they grab that present. They think it's a bomb. They take it off.
Secret Service detail or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
They go to like some code red kind of thing, and they all like protect the package.
Right.
Jermaine Jackson being the package.
Yeah.
And get rid of the other package, the potential threat.
Yeah. and Tootie's just like, but I'm Tootie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jermaine's, your name's Tootie?
Yeah.
And then he almost like, that's a weird name.
Right. So Jermaine is very like at first he watches it and he quickly I think assesses the situation, realizes that Tootie may not be the threat that the bodyguards treated her as if she was.
Right.
And he's very kind to her.
Yeah.
And he kind of comes over and engages her like, well, since you made all that. Well,
And
yeah, he starts talking with her.
She's like, I would never hurt you.
Yeah.
Which often is the thing, the person says right before.
They
Shivving the...
Right before shivving him.
Right.
Right. That would be genius of her to let them take the package. And meanwhile, she's got like a shiv.
Right.
A homemade shiv.
That was... They had that in their back pocket as a story. If they decided, if Kim Fields was going to leave the show or
Right.
they were just going to have her shiv Jermaine Jackson.
Right.
Right Tootie out of them.
Right.
Well, she's at Sing Sing now.
Yeah. She could smuggle some shiv in under a scarf or something, that
Right.
she made. Like, she'd fashion a shiv out of something or other and tuck it under a scarf and bring it in.
Right.
So she's sitting there, but she's sitting down on this sofa with Jermaine and very soft-spoken Jermaine Jackson, being very calm.
Right.
And clearly showing the massive charisma and dynamic talent and presence that made Jermaine Jackson such a big superstar at the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you basically had Bruce Springsteen. This is my ranking of music superstars in that time. Bruce Springsteen, number 3. Jermaine Jackson, number 2. And Michael Jackson, number 1.
Okay.
And there's not a whole lot of difference between 1 and 2.
No. And yet, again, we hadn't quite hit even peak Michael Jackson yet.
No, that's,
we were like
that's true. Yeah, this is 82, and Thriller was 83.
Yeah.
So this was like in between, like off the wall Michael Jackson was really huge in that. And, you had the Jacksons.
Yeah.
Or the Jackson 5.
Right. And Tootie even mentions that, she grew up with the Jackson 5.
Yeah.
That's why she gets to be president of the fan club.
Right. So when
These
she was
other girls didn't?
Like, one, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
They all shrug. Oh, okay, she got us there. Yeah, so Jermaine Jackson it's an interesting choice, and it's kind of
like when I first watched it, not thinking about when it's aired, I'm like, oh, they wanted to get Michael. Clearly, they weren't going to get Michael, so they got to stand in for Michael.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's really. I think they just found someone. They just looked for stars, and or maybe Kim Fields is really into Jermaine Jackson.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, at least it's not. At least it's Jermaine Jackson is probably the number 2 Jackson. It's not Tito.
Right.
Tito was probably the Tootie of the Jacksons.
Yeah.
But Jermaine did have some hits.
Yeah. No.
We're hard pressed to think of any.
Right.
No, he did. Like some of the songs that I remember he did, I think were after this. So at the time they're going, "Let's Get Serious," and he had like a song called "Dynamite," not based on the teen magazine of the time.
Here, this is definitely a tangent, but the first time I heard of Jermaine Jackson, someone was telling me about him, and the way they told me the story made it sound like he was like a long lost brother, like no one knew about him. But I think it was maybe he had been on the outs of the family or something for a little while, and then got back together when they did the whole victory thing.
Okay, well, yeah, that may be. I don't remember the the dynamics.
I didn't understand what I was being told.
I don't think Michael was very. Yeah, there was some kind of distance, definitely, and even at this point, let's face it, Jermaine was in his brother's shadow.
Right, and he's
already his younger brother's shadow.
Is he like the second oldest or the oldest?
I don't know. He's older than Michael.
Yeah,
and he's been upstaged
he
by.
He wasn't the one that pretended to play bass, right?
No, that was. I'm more of. Hey, I'm more of an expert on his solo career, not so much the Jackson 5. For me, he really blossomed after the Jackson 5.
Right.
We could get out from under those other hacks and do songs like do what they do when they do what you did to me, or whatever that was.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, that was more his Quiet Storm ballad, I guess. Yeah. But the point is, this episode treats him like he's a superstar.
Yeah.
With the hysteria, the offhand comparisons to Beatlemania.
Right.
You would think Jermaine Jackson was a big deal now.
Yeah.
I don't think he was ever that big a deal. Even back then. Granted, I'm sure he could have a fan club and all this. And
yeah.
So that's not unrealistic. But so it makes his interactions with Tootie a little bit more, amusing, because he's clearly like, but I guess the point isn't that it's Jermaine Jackson, but he's a superstar, and they're
Right.
making a point about fame and the relationship between fans and celebrities.
And then it's difficult, and
Right, because
he's like, he stays out of all that fan club stuff.
right,
He doesn't know. He doesn't read the letters Tootie sends every day.
right. He did. Yeah, totally normal.
Right.
Yeah, he tells her that he gives her a glimpse into his life, and she realizes that he's not at all involved in the day to day. For him, it's like just going day to day, and he doesn't have that personal interaction. Like she thought that there was a special connection
Right.
there. That's why she was his number one fan and everything, and she realizes pretty quickly, and she's heartbroken that he's not mean to her at all. He's very
No.
kind to her, but she just
Yeah.
realizes that she doesn't mean anything to him, and she never will.
Right.
Which is it's kind of a downer.
Yeah. And then like a bodyguard comes out with the remains of her paper mache head.
Right.
And says something. He says something like she's right there, and he says something kind of just about like how just that he destroyed it or something.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing going off on there. It's melting.
Right.
Or-
He says,
or
yeah, he assures everybody that there wasn't a bomb or anything
Yeah.
in there. And
And then some like reporters or something come in. I don't know. They look Swedish for some reason. And meanwhile, Mrs. Garrett's trying to get in there
right. She's worried.
to rescue Tootie, and she gets a good bit there. She like does all this physical stuff to push through, and the kid, she's like, I got to get in there or something, and and the kid's like, whatever turns you on. And then she finally pushes through and says to the bodyguard, "Have you seen a small black girl?"
Yeah.
And she's surrounded by small
Right,
black girls, and
right.
they even do an extra cut to show them all,
Yeah.
just to make sure the joke landed.
Yeah.
But she did pretty well with that line, I thought, and all the physical stuff.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, and I can't blame her. I mean, she's responsible for Tootie. She's the one
She is.
that took her here. But in reality, probably the safest place for Tootie is on the other side of that door.
Right.
Not in this like mob of people
Yeah.
that are jostling for position, and it's probably a lot safer in there.
Yeah.
With although, yeah, you could certainly raise an eyebrow about letting an underage girl in this dressing room with some rock star
Yeah.
and his handlers, his
Yeah.
hangers on and everything, but nothing like that going on here. Just Jermaine being very friendly to her.
And then, once the reporters come in and stuff, that like he gets distracted by that, and then she overhears that the guy who called her call someone in Philadelphia with the exact same phone call.
Right, and thanks
that's-
her for
yeah.
being Jermaine's number one fan, and
Yeah, and that's the last straw.
yeah, and she's
She just kind of nods to the guy. At
yeah,
the
she's
door.
ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually that was pretty well done.
And that guy seems sympathetic to her, like he's just waiting for her to, like he's watching her and waiting for her to make the decision.
Yeah,
rather than
exactly.
forcing her out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
Much of the episode is ridiculous. However, there's like a 3 or 4 minute stretch there that they don't play it for laughs and everything, and they're making a serious point, and it
Right.
actually did resonate a little bit. It's like it's interesting that they're saying something about the relationship of fans, and they're sort of telling their young audience, hey, it's not as it appears. There's a machine here, and don't get too wrapped up in this.
Right.
Some of the other stuff has fallen by the wayside, like the point about it's like the aspect of it, like don't obsess on something to the exclusion of your friends and your schoolwork. They're sort of focusing on the other end of it, like, look, this isn't reciprocated.
Right.
And it's interesting that they emphasize that, and that's what really hits home with Tootie.
Yeah.
Not that she let down anybody else. It's
Right.
just like, oh, this ain't happening with Jermaine. He doesn't really care about me.
Yeah. They dropped that part
Yeah.
as soon as Mrs. Garrett decided to take her.
Right.
Like
Like,
that
yeah.
storyline's out of the.
They'll work it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe find a way somehow, I guess. Or maybe Tootie just sat there on a couch with Jermaine Jackson for 5 minutes and realized, this isn't such a big deal.
Right. And luckily, the fair went on way longer than the Jermaine Jackson concert.
Right,
so
because-
they were able to get on the train and get back and still be part of the fair.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Or Tootie slept on the couch in the lounge that night.
yeah. But so Mrs. Garrett asked Tootie, Tootie
Yeah.
makes her way out very calmly, and the mania has subsided, and Mrs. Garrett asks if what Jermaine, if Jermaine got the present, and she said, yeah, he did, and she asked him, well, what did he say? And he said, thank you.
Right.
That's it.
And she's
I don't know if Mrs. Garrett
starts
realizes.
crying, and Mrs. Garrett,
Yeah.
you know.
I think Mrs. Garrett is. It's interesting. It's like, what does Mrs. Garrett understand what happened? Probably not yet, but
Yeah, how wise is Mrs. Garrett in general?
Well,
like
she-
you disagree with this decision, but like in the other episode we talked about, she clearly was.
yeah,
She was running a
all-knowing.
con the whole time.
Yeah. Well, she's wise. She's runs the cafeteria well. She runs her Edna's Edibles.
Yeah.
Didn't fireproof it very
She
well,
helped
but
raise these girls.
yeah, she's
so
very
that they
wise.
Could go to college and
Yeah.
open a shop.
Well, I'll say this: I don't think she's wise enough to have taken Tootie because she realized that by taking her there, she would get to meet Jermaine Jackson backstage,
Right.
and all of her illusions would be shattered, and she'd go back to reality.
Right.
I don't think she's that wise.
Did she think maybe just it would calm her a little bit? It
I
would
don't-
satisfy her, and that she got to see the show.
I guess
Yeah.
that's why I don't really understand. It seems like she just like, well, it'll stop her crying for a few minutes, so it's worth it. I'll even pay for the train tickets and popcorn at the garden, whatever.
It worked with Arnold that time. He wanted to see Tito.
Yeah,
and
Tito, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Earth, Wind, yeah,
Well, yeah. So Tootie, maybe she'll move on to like Lionel Richie or something very shortly.
yeah.
That'd be funny if she basically just is disillusioned with Jermaine Jackson, but like the next week she's president of the Lionel Richie fan club.
Right. Well, here's something interesting I read today. When that last season, when they had the whatever the shop was called then, they had a number of guest stars, musical guest stars. Guess who one of them was?
Lionel Richie,
No.
Jermaine Jackson.
Yeah.
He made what? he
That's
was?
what this Facts of Life, this website devoted to the Facts of Life said.
I couldn't believe that
They list. I had to read it twice because I'm like
twice.
making sure they weren't confusing this Jermaine.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they. I'm guessing they didn't address the
Yeah, was it in
continuity.
continuity?
I met someone named Tootie before.
Yeah. Couldn't
She's
be.
a lot shorter.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you made me want to see a later episode.
I kind of want to say, yeah.
Facts of
yeah,
Life.
yeah.
I admit you did something I didn't think you'd
Now,
be
it
able
could
to
be
do.
there's something, that wasn't entirely accurate, but there was a list of like 5 or 6 people that the new shop afforded them the ability to do that because it was like a malt shop or something.
So like 1988 or 89 or 87, 88 Jermaine
Yeah.
Jackson. That would be a different place than 1982 Jermaine Jackson. So that would be
Sequence
after
out.
the Victory Tour,
Right.
which I always thought that was kind of a weird thing. Like basically them piggybacking on, and probably a lot of them they don't care. Money's money.
Yeah.
But it's sort of weird, like the way that was presented, like the Jacksons back together and their comeback. But it was like it's Michael,
Yeah.
That's weird to me, but
It's family, man.
his family, yeah.
He's making sure they're okay, or someone forced him to do it.
Yeah, I think I have a feeling I know who it is too. And it's not Mrs.
This
Garrett.
is what family does.
Yeah.
You made a commitment.
Yeah, right.
You made a commitment to do this tour before you became the biggest musical act in history.
Yeah, I'm sure the old Joe Jackson or somebody was
Yeah.
pulling some strings on that.
And Michael was still resisting, and then and he showed him a tape of this episode.
Yeah,
See, Mrs. Garrett gave in.
yeah,
Sure, it got Jermaine on TV, but that's not what's important here.
yeah. I wonder if Joe Jackson like strong-armed the producers of this show to get Jermaine Jackson on there.
It could be. Maybe he
I'm
met
not-
Norman Lear at a party or something.
Yeah, like shoved them against a wall.
Yeah.
Look,
Took
you're
his
getting
hat
Jermaine
off.
on your show.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And they wrote an episode around Jermaine Jackson.
Yeah.
But-
Or it was one of those situations where they just said, well, it's going to be a celebrity, and then they just kept going, fishing for one until
Right.
one agreed to be.
Well, that's the genius of the Facts of Life, though, is they turned what could have been just a simple celebrity stunt casting episode into an interesting dissection of the nature of fame
Yeah.
and the relationship of fandom to superstars.
That's true.
So Starstruck, I really enjoyed Starstruck, though. I got to say, I love
I
love
did.
the scenes. I love the Jermaine Jackson stuff.
Right.
It really was a 2D centric episode, which normally that wouldn't necessarily be my favorite, but
Yeah.
I was baffled by much of this episode, but I enjoyed it a little bit more than the Four Musketeers, I think.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, it was some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah.
And Jermaine Jackson went on to bigger and better things. And the Facts of Life also went on to bigger and better things.
Right, and Nancy McKeon went on to a couple series that I don't think lasted, but...
well, she was
and
anchor of The Division on Lifetime, of course.
What was The Division? I don't remember.
It was like
was
female
cop show.
cops,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It had her, I think, Bonnie Bedelia.
Okay. Is it recent?
It was in the 2000s.
Oh, okay.
And I know at least one person that listens to this will...
Good.
Possibly even the person that requested this episode will enjoy me mentioning The Division, I hope.
Yeah. And she did a lot of TV movies, too. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nancy McKeon. She was probably had the most viable career.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe her or Kim Fields, right? Because Kim Fields was on a sitcom. And
Yeah, she was on I forget the name of the one with Queen Latifah.
Living Single?
Yeah. And she's a director.
Yeah. Kim Fields has stayed active in show
Yeah.
business.
Her mom was an actress, too.
Yeah. Lisa Whelchel.
She's a perennial on Yahoo trending.
Is that so? Yeah.
It seems like every 6 months her name shows up.
She became an outspoken, Christian,
Right.
outspoken Christian, and objected to certain things or other. And I guess was she on a reality show? Like,
I think she was on Dancing with the Stars.
okay.
Yeah. And apparently it was a Christian, was already had those feelings while they made the show, because they did a show about one of the characters losing her virginity, and it was supposed to be about her, and she rejected that premise. So Natalie got the call. And Mindy Cohn, she does like voiceover work, right?
I guess, yeah.
Guest work and stuff.
She seems to be the least visible of the four. Yeah. And of course, Mrs. Garrett.
She's still out there.
Yeah. I poked fun at Charlotte Rae a little bit, but she was on Car 54.
Yeah.
She, and had an appearance on a Bilko episode. I mean, she had a long, distinguished career.
Yeah.
And this is probably what she's going to be remembered for.
Probably, yeah.
But, hey.
Hey, 8 of 9 seasons she was on the show, so.
Wow, she was on 8 of the 9?
I think so, or maybe.
I thought she would have left
maybe
earlier.
7, but.
She was on a lot of
the
seasons.
majority, and plus a season of different shows.
So, yeah, she played that character,
Yeah.
made it her own.
Yep.
Can't see too many other people being Mrs. Garrett.
No, that's why all those other housekeepers in Different Strokes couldn't live up to her.
Right.
The great Cloris Leachman couldn't live up to her.
Exactly. Well, so the Facts of Life now. Do we want to talk about the theme song before we?
A little bit. It's a good song.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I mean,
I want to talk about the theme song.
Yeah,
now.
yeah, I do. No, one thing I want to talk about is that this and the Different Strokes song get mentioned a lot as, Alan Thicke wrote these. Mm-hmm. Which he co-wrote them with his then wife Gloria Loring, who was a soap star, or became a soap star, and she had some sort of hit in the 80s, right? Like a duet with someone?
Yes.
That was on a soap, too? Like
yes, with, I can't remember, Carl something.
Really
Friends
generic.
and Lovers, or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It was a staple of
Right.
light rock.
She's singing the song.
Mm-hmm.
Although Charlotte Rae apparently sang it on the first season.
Yeah, the first season they had, like, the girls and
Yeah.
Mrs. Garrett chiming in with some of the lines.
Right. And there's a guy who, I don't know anything about him. I'm only going so far in defending people beyond Alan Thicke.
Okay, so what's your...
I'm just saying that, Alan Thicke deserves partial credit. Just because they got divorced doesn't mean she's not. I mean, she seems a big part of these songs.
I'm not sure I like this revisionist history here. I'm perfectly fine with giving Alan Thicke primary credit, at least. This is kind of, to make another Beatles reference, this sounds to be a little bit like the Lennon-McCartney stuff, with Paul McCartney wanted to reverse the credits on some of the songs that he wrote.
On the credits, it reads Gloria Loring, Alan Thicke, and that other guy.
And that other guy.
Albert something, I think.
Okay. Well, that guy never gets any credit.
No.
I didn't even know. I think I knew that Gloria Loring and Alan Thicke were like a team there, but
yeah.
I didn't know the other guy.
Right.
And I still don't know the other guy, actually.
And I enjoy, I think I told you, I enjoy, it's not quite as timed as I thought it was. Like when the show starts, the logo kind of zooms in.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was timed exactly with that, but it's a little, there's like a slide guitar little thing, just just one chord. Yeah.
Or and they exaggerated that, like, as they went on. They'd have different versions of it. And
yeah.
Because actually, yeah.
So in this version, it's just kind of
Yeah,
like sliding
okay.
up
Yeah,
to a
okay,
chord.
right.
But and then you take the good,
Right,
take the
and
bad.
she's singing it very sassy,
Yeah,
like almost like a Barbara Mandrell, like a country kind of like flavoring to the way she's singing it.
right.
Like to get them right, and all that.
Yeah.
And then they would exaggerate that, and then as time went on, it got even worse, and like they'd exaggerate that more. And then I guess the part I'm talking is that they had that actual guitar like as they're starting the song, and then it would be like faster, and they'd singing it faster, and I gotta admit it's in my head, but boy, I really I don't know if I would say it's a good song.
And you like too the closing credits had different lyrics.
I do like that.
Like another
I love
verse.
any show that has an alternate verse or something like that, and it's a totally different verse they play. Over the end credits.
And I didn't catch all the lyrics, but there was some line like something about your brother telling them.
Yeah, have your brother tell your mother about the facts of life or something.
Okay.
Yeah, something about that. Yeah.
All right, that makes.
Yeah, but they have some like, I forget how it starts out, like something to care about. Oh, and share the joy of managing, and some. I mean, they're sort of like big words for a TV theme song. Is what I'm trying to say.
How do you rhyme something with managing?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna try to come up with it now. But it's because the end credits, it's a little bit less in my head than you take the good, you take the bad, and taking both, and there you have the facts of life.
Right.
There's a lot of wisdom in that, I will say. There's a lot of Edna Garrett wisdom in that little line there.
Yeah.
So, 2 episodes of the facts of life. I'd say we took the good, we took the bad, we took them both, and we had them.
Yeah, I got nothing else.
What else is there to say about the facts of life?
So when a man and woman.
Oh, right. No.
No.
We're definitely not going out. Save that for the Pussycat Lounge.
Okay.
This episode brought to you by your local branch of the Jermaine Jackson fan club. Join now, and one day you too could be Jermaine's #1 fan. This episode also brought to you by the Eastland Academy Scholarship Fair, featuring cookies by Mrs. G, comedy by Cousin Jerry, but no scars. This episode also brought to you by the Eastland Cafeteria. Come for Mrs. G's food, stay for the bicker. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/battleofthenetworkshows.
Now what's wrong with that?
Nothing, if you're selling cookies at the Pussycat Theater.